I bought a house without telling my parents. Only later did I find out they'd been plotting to have my sister and her whole family move in with me without paying a dime. Hey Reddit! I'm Rachel, 29 years old, from Texas. And honestly, I've spent most of my life stuck in the long, exhausting shadow of my older sister, Melissa. She's 3 years ahead of me, and, well, she's always been the golden child. You probably know the kind, book smart, super outgoing, and could charm her way out of just about anything. Meanwhile, I was the dependable one, which, in my family, basically meant I was the one they could count on to clean up after everyone else. Growing up, Melissa always seemed to get the royal treatment. When it came to birthdays, hers were a whole production. Big backyard blowouts, bounce houses, even a pony one year. Me? I got a pizza party squeezed into the dining room and a store-bought cake with too much icing. Christmas was no different. Melissa unwrapped the fancy Barbie dream house. I got some off-brand version missing parts, no elevator, no charm. And whenever I'd ask why things weren't the same, my parents would just give me the usual, "You don't need all that extra stuff," or "Be thankful for what you have, Rachel." And I was. I really was. But I couldn't help noticing that nobody ever asked Melissa to be thankful the way they did me. The real slap came when college rolled around. I'd worked my tail off all through high school, AP classes, extracurriculars, volunteering, just trying to keep my grades up and make something of myself. I got into a local university, and I figured I'd commute to save some money. Meanwhile, Melissa had already gone off to her dream school, fully paid for by my parents. So naturally, I assumed they'd help me out a little too. Nope. I mentioned my plan to live at home to save on dorms, and my mom looked at me like I'd asked if I could raise a goat in the living room. "Well, if you're going to stay here, you'll need to contribute," she said, as if it were just obvious. Melissa got full support because she earned it. You, on the other hand, need to learn responsibility. I was stunned. I was 18, fresh out of high school, about to start college, and suddenly I was expected to pay rent. Contributing turned into $300 a month for rent and utilities. And of course, I was also expected to buy my own groceries. It might not sound like a huge amount now, but when you're a broke freshman working a part-time job at a bookstore for $9 an hour, it feels massive. I pushed back, reminded them how they'd paid for everything when Melissa went off to school. That she never once had to worry about money. Mom just shrugged, like it was nothing. Melissa needed support. "You're different, Rachel. You're independent. You'll manage." So I did. I picked up every shift I could. Skipped meals when I had to. I'd walk past the campus coffee shop every morning, watching other students sip their fancy lattes, while I was brown bagging PB&J and chugging the free coffee from the bookstore break room. I never bought new textbooks. I scoured used ones, borrowed from the library, or shared with classmates. And every month like clockwork, I handed that $300 over to my parents. While Melissa, she was living it up at her out-of-state school, staying in a shiny new dorm my parents had fully covered. She even called me once just to complain that her dorm's AC wasn't cool enough. I nearly screamed. My own car didn't even have working AC, and I couldn't afford to fix it. My parents still sent her spending money every month. I overheard my mom on the phone once, saying we just don't want her to struggle. College is hard enough. And I just stood there, holding my $1 pack of ramen noodles, wondering why that kind of care and softness never seemed to apply to me. What really got under my skin wasn't even the money. It was the way they constantly acted like Melissa walked on water. She graduated with a 3.1 in communications, and they threw this huge celebration, catered food, a DJ, the whole deal. When I graduated with a 3.9 in computer science, we had a quiet dinner at home. Mom made lasagna and said we didn't want to make a big fuss. And honestly, that was what stung the most. Not the lack of cash, but the clear message that no matter what I did, I just didn't matter as much. Melissa was the one with promise, the one they bragged about. Me? I was just there. Even when I succeeded, it was brushed off. Rachel's smart. She doesn't need help, they'd say. Being capable felt more like a punishment than a strength. After college, I didn't waste any time moving out. Found a tiny place near my job and started piecing together a life on my own terms. It wasn't easy, but for once, it was mine. I lived cheap, worked hard, and slowly started putting away money. Meanwhile, Melissa got married to Brian. My parents absolutely adore the guy, even though he's always between jobs. They've got 3 kids now, Chloe, 6, Caleb, 3, and little Eli, who just turned 1. And surprise, surprise, my parents are constantly swooping in to rescue them. When their car broke down last year, my parents forked over the cash for a new one. Melissa says she's stressed taking care of 3 kids? My parents babysit practically every weekend. I try to tell myself it doesn't get to me anymore, but that'd be a lie. No matter what I do, I always seem to be in second place to Melissa. That's why I don't share much with them anymore. There's just no point. I know deep down they don't really care. Not in the way they do for her. So, I've been playing things close to the chest lately. But recently, I made a big decision. I was finally ready to buy a house. I've been stuck in this overpriced, shoebox-sized apartment for years, saving every penny I could. And I finally hit that point where I said, you know what? I've earned this. Here's the kicker, though, I didn't tell my family. Not because it was some huge secret, but because they have this annoying habit of turning every milestone into a group project. If I mentioned buying a house, I knew exactly what would happen. They'd start talking about how it could help Melissa and her kids, and suddenly it'd be their house too. So I figured, better to keep quiet until everything was finalized. I guess I was being too hopeful. Turns out, a woman I work with, let's call her Tina, managed to let it slip. Tina's one of those people who's always nosing around in other folks' business. I think she just casually mentioned I was house hunting, and wouldn't you know it, she told someone who happened to live next door to Melissa. And in true small-town Texas fashion, the news spread like wildfire. A few days later, my phone rang. It was my mom. She sounded way too cheerful. Rachel, why didn't you tell us you're looking for a house? I should have seen it coming. But I played it cool. Oh, I'm just looking around a little. Nothing serious yet. She goes, well, Melissa and I were just talking, and we have some great ideas for you. You're going to want something with plenty of space, Mom said, like it was already settled. At least 4 bedrooms for the kids, obviously. The kids? Whose kids? I don't have any. She just kept talking, like it all made perfect sense. You'll need space for Melissa's family when they visit. And for us, too. Oh, and it'd be ideal if it was near Melissa's neighborhood. I shouldn't have been surprised, but somehow I still was. Just like that, my future home had turned into a solution for their problems. I muttered something vague and got off the phone as quickly as I could, hoping it was just a one-off comment. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. From that day forward, it was like Mom and Melissa took on house hunting as their new full-time hobby. I'm not even kidding, every single day they'd send me links to these massive homes. We're talking 5-bedroom monsters with pools, 3-car garages, and more square footage than I'd ever want to clean. It felt like they thought I was trying out for some HGTV special. One day, Mom texted me, "Did you see the one on Maple Street? It's huge, just perfect." Another time, Melissa sent me a listing for a 6-bedroom place with a message that actually said, "This would be so suitable for us. We could finally have room to spread out." Us. I stared at that text for a full minute, just baffled. How did me buying a house suddenly become our joint family venture? And the worst part? They weren't even pretending this had anything to do with what I wanted. Every listing was basically custom-tailored for Melissa's crew. This one's got a finished basement. Brian could make it his man cave. The kids would love the pool. Look, Rachel, there's even a guest room for Mom and Dad. It was draining. Completely. At first, I tried the polite route. I gently reminded them I was only looking for something small, something just for me. But that just seemed to fire them up more. So eventually, I gave up. I muted the group chat and stopped replying altogether. Figured they'd get the message eventually. Meanwhile, I kept doing my own thing. Nights spent scrolling Zillow, weekends walking through open houses alone. I never told anyone where I was going, and I made damn sure to avoid any neighborhoods close to Melissa. The last thing I needed was to bump into someone who'd run off and report back to my mom. And then, I found it. Tucked just outside the city limits, there was this little 2-bedroom cottage that instantly felt like home. It had a sweet little front porch, a sunny kitchen that made me smile, and a backyard that would be perfect for a veggie garden. It wasn't flashy, but it had heart. And more importantly, it felt like mine. I made an offer, held my breath for a few nerve-wracking days, and then, boom, it was accepted. I can't even explain how good that felt. For once, I was doing something entirely for me. No advice, no expectations, no strings. Of course, I didn't say a word to my family. I let them keep sending their fantasy listings while I quietly signed the papers and moved forward. Then, out of nowhere, my mom called. "We're having dinner next weekend," she said. "You'll be there, right?" I almost said no. I really did. But then I figured, screw it. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. So I agreed. But I knew exactly what I was walking into. They were probably already printing off floor plans and building a whole slideshow presentation. I had a feeling it was going to be ridiculous. But I also had a plan of my own. I was going to drop the bomb. I'd already bought a house. No fluff, no sugarcoating. Thanks to everyone who stuck around for the ride, I promised I'd come back with an update after the dinner. So here we go. Update number 1. Hey again, Reddit. First off, thank you for all the comments and advice on my last post. I've been reading through them, and honestly, it's been both hilarious and incredibly validating. So many of you pointed out how unhinged and entitled my family sounds. And yeah, you're not wrong. It was also weirdly comforting to see how many of you have dealt with similar situations. Misery loves company, I guess? Anyway, as promised, here's what went down at the dinner. So I show up at my parents' house at exactly 6 p.m., already bracing myself for the nonsense. The second I walk in, it's chaos. Melissa's kids are tearing through the place like tiny tornadoes. Brian is glued to the couch watching some game, and Mom's rushing around the kitchen like it's Thanksgiving. She glances at me and says, "Oh good, you're on time for once." Off to a strong start. We sit down for dinner, and the first few minutes are standard filler talk. Dad's griping about gas prices, Brian is ranting about something dumb at work, and Melissa's complaining about how hard it is managing 3 kids. "Eli keeps waking up in the middle of the night," she says, loading her plate with mashed potatoes. "We're so cramped, I swear, I'm losing my mind." I knew exactly where this was heading. But I nodded along, focused on my lasagna, and kept my mouth shut. Then Mom clears her throat. You know that throat clear, that means something's coming. She gives me this exaggerated smile and says, "Rachel, we've been talking, and we think we found the perfect house for you." I almost choked on my water. Of course they had a plan. "Oh," I said, trying to keep my tone as neutral as possible. Melissa jumps in, all excited. "It's a beautiful place. Just a few blocks from us. It's got 5 bedrooms, a big yard for the kids, and even a guest suite." Mom nods enthusiastically. "It's perfect for everyone. The kids can each have their own room. Brian could set up an office, and it's in a great school district." I just stared at them. They weren't even pretending this was about me anymore. Melissa leaned in with that satisfied smile of hers. "We could go see it tomorrow if you want." And that's when I hit my limit. I set my fork down and said, "Actually, I already bought a house." Silence. Like, dead silence. Even the kids froze. Mom's face went tight. "What?" "I bought a house," I repeated. "A small, 2-bedroom cottage just outside the city. It's exactly what I wanted." For half a second, I thought maybe they'd be happy for me. Nope. Mom's face turned the color of a tomato. Melissa's jaw dropped like a cartoon character. "A cottage," Melissa said, like I'd said I was moving into a cave. How are we supposed to fit in a cottage? You're not, I said, calm as can be. Because it's my house. I bought it for me. I didn't yell it, but I didn't sugarcoat it either. It was the truth, plain and simple. Before Melissa could even open her mouth, Mom jumped in. Rachel, how could you make such a major decision without talking to us first? We've been bending over backwards trying to find the perfect place for you. I took a breath, trying to stay calm. No. You've been bending over backwards trying to find the perfect place for Melissa and her family. I never asked for your help. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I went out and got it. Melissa's voice went up like she was on the verge of tears. But we need this, Rachel. Do you have any idea how hard it's been for us in that tiny apartment? Chloe and Caleb have to share a room, and Eli's crib is stuck in our bedroom. It's not fair to the kids. I exhaled slowly, trying not to lose it. That's not my responsibility, Melissa. I've worked my ass off to get to where I am. I'm not about to give up the home I dreamed of just to patch up your situation. That's when Dad slammed his hand down on the table hard enough to make the plates rattle. You're being selfish, Rachel. Family is supposed to take care of each other. What's wrong with you? My heart was pounding, but I stood up. I'm not selfish. I'm just finally choosing to stand up for myself. And if that makes me the bad guy to you, then fine, call me the villain. That's when the room exploded. Melissa started crying, full on sobbing. Mom was yelling about how she didn't raise me this way. Dad launched into another angry rant about how disappointed he was in me. And Brian? He sat there shoveling food into his mouth like he was watching a soap opera instead of his family imploding. I didn't wait around. I grabbed my purse and made for the door. Mom followed me out, shouting, "You can't just walk away from your family like this." I turned around just long enough to say, "Watch me." Then I got in my car and drove off, hands shaking, heart racing, but somehow feeling a weird kind of peace underneath it all. I'd finally said what needed to be said. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. I stood my ground. And I know the storm is far from over, but for once, I don't feel like I'm drowning in it. Thank you again, Reddit. Seriously, the support and stories you've shared mean more than I can say. Update number 1. Hi again, Reddit. First off, thank you. I really didn't expect the kind of support I've gotten here, but wow, it's been a lifesaver. Reading through your messages has honestly helped me stay sane. A lot of you said I should have seen this coming, and yeah, I probably should have. But still, nothing really prepares you for how fast things can spiral. So here's the fallout. That same night after dinner, Melissa sent me a picture. Her kids were piled on the couch, toys everywhere, and the caption read, "Look how cramped we are. Do you think this is fair to Chloe and Caleb?" I didn't reply. What was I supposed to say? That it was somehow my fault her living room was messy? That my buying a house for myself magically forced her kids to share a room? I silenced my phone and tried to sleep. Wishful thinking. By the next morning, I had 5 missed calls from Mom and a string of texts from Melissa. Stuff like, "You always think about yourself. I thought family meant something to you. Mom didn't even sleep last night, she's so upset." And the best one. "You've changed, Rachel. This isn't the sister I grew up with." No kidding. The sister she grew up with got ignored into silence. Now she's finally got a spine, and they don't like it. I tried to focus on work, but my phone kept buzzing like a fire alarm. Mom started texting too. "You're being selfish. We're all disappointed in you. Think about what you're doing to Melissa's kids. It's not too late to sell the house and get something more appropriate for the family." I muted them both. But then came the voicemails. Same guilt trip messages, only now with their voices behind the words, and somehow that made it worse. Mom sounded furious. Melissa sounded like she'd been crying for days. And Dad? He called and yelled at me for 5 straight minutes about how I was tearing the family apart. As if that wasn't enough, my aunt, yes, that aunt, the one who's barely spoken to me since I was 12, called me out of nowhere. She says, "I heard about what's going on with Melissa. Can't you find it in your heart to help? Family comes first, Rachel. I almost laughed. This is the same woman who once forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. Now she's suddenly worried about family values? I told her I wasn't talking about it and hung up. Then came the Facebook drama. Melissa posted a picture of her kids all squeezed together on their bunk beds with the caption, "All they want is a little space to grow." But I guess not everyone values family. Her friends flooded the comments with sympathy. "You're such a great mom. Whoever's letting you down doesn't deserve you. I can't believe someone would just leave you like that." I wanted to scream. She was painting me as the villain, and I couldn't even defend myself without sounding petty or bitter. So I stayed quiet and kept scrolling, until my mom decided to top it all. She posted a photo of my house. How she even got it, I don't know. Maybe she drove around looking for it. Maybe Tina blabbed again. Her caption read, "It's so sad when someone forgets where they came from. Family gives everything for you, and this is how they repay you." I blocked both of them on the spot, but not before one of my coworkers messaged me, asking what was going on. Yep, Tina had seen the post and started spreading it around the office. Now people at work think I'm living large in a mansion while abandoning my family. For the record, it's a cozy cottage. Not a mansion. Not even close. The stress started catching up to me fast. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt my stomach drop. I stopped checking messages, logged off Facebook, ignored my email. Even at work, I could barely concentrate. I was just bracing for the next wave of guilt or drama. Then, one evening, Melissa showed up, unannounced. She was standing at my front door, holding baby Eli, with the other 2 kids trailing behind her. She looked worn out, bags under her eyes, hair a mess, the whole deal. The kids were crying or fussing. "Rachel," she said, voice cracking, "we need to talk." I stood in the doorway with my arms crossed, making it clear they weren't coming in. "What do you want, Melissa?" She looked at me like she was on the verge of collapse. "Please, we don't have anywhere else to go. Our landlord's raising the rent again. We can't afford it. Just let us stay with you for a little while. The kids need some stability." And in that moment, my heart ached a little, but I didn't waver. "Melissa, I'm sorry things are hard right now, but my house isn't an option." "It's not big enough," I said, steady but firm. "And honestly, this isn't my responsibility." Melissa looked at me like I'd just kicked her dog. "So that's it?" she asked, voice cracking. "You're just going to let us suffer?" "I'm not letting you suffer," I said, standing my ground. "I've worked hard to build a stable life, and I'm not going to throw that away because you want me to feel guilty. This is my house, Melissa. My life." She muttered something I didn't catch, then turned and stormed off, dragging her 3 kids behind her like some kind of dramatic parade of guilt. I shut the door behind them and leaned against it, heart pounding. There it was again. That mix of guilt and relief that had become all too familiar. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Mom. She launched into it immediately. "You're heartless, Rachel," she snapped. "I can't believe you turned your own sister away. She's struggling, and you're just cold and ungrateful. Someday, you're going to regret this." I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I just ended the call. Even now, as I write this, my phone keeps lighting up with texts. Mom's sending full-on essay-length guilt bombs. Melissa's following up with photos of the kids looking sad or squished together on their couch. And Dad just left me a voicemail that started with, "I hope you're happy." I didn't even bother listening to the rest. I've hit my limit. Tomorrow morning, first thing, I'm changing my number. I'll give it to the people I trust, close friends, my boss, maybe a cousin or 2 who've never stirred the pot. Everyone else? Cut off. The social media cleanup comes next, changing privacy settings, blocking the usual suspects, and making sure no one can snoop or stir things up behind my back. It's going to take time, but I'm doing this step by step. Thanks again, Reddit. Your support and comments have kept me from completely unraveling through all of this. I honestly don't know what I would have done without your perspective. Update 3. Hey Reddit, back again. Wow, so many of you didn't hold back in the comments, and I mean that in a good way. A lot of you were angry for me, and yeah, you were right. I should have blocked my family a long time ago. After I changed my number, I went ahead and blocked every one of them across the board: Facebook, Instagram, even the random extended relatives who like to play mediator. It was long overdue. And honestly, it felt amazing. But of course, peace didn't last long. Not with my family. Last weekend, I was out in my backyard trying to figure out how to plant lavender. Google makes it look so simple, but I'd already managed to kill 3 plants. I was covered in dirt, halfway through digging a hole, when I heard someone knocking at my front door. At first, I thought it was my neighbor or maybe a delivery. Nope. It was my mom, standing on the porch, holding a pie and wearing the most forced smile I've ever seen. "Hi, Rachel," she said, like this was just some friendly neighborhood drop-in and not after weeks of me cutting her off. I blinked, completely caught off guard. Hi." I stood there awkwardly, debating whether to shut the door or let her in. Before I could decide, she pushed the pie toward me and said, "I thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing. I brought your favorite apple. My favorite is cherry." She knows that. She's always known that. But whatever, I let her in. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't want to have a confrontation on my porch. She walked in like she owned the place, set the pie down on the counter, and started looking around like she was taking mental notes. "This is lovely, Rachel," she said, running her hand across the back of one of my dining chairs. "You've really done well for yourself." I mumbled a half-hearted thanks and waited for the real reason she was there. She sat down at my kitchen table and let out this long, dramatic sigh. "I wanted to apologize," she started. "Things got a little heated. I realize now we were wrong to push you so hard. You've worked hard for this house, and I should have respected that." I watched her carefully, trying to figure out if this was sincere or just another move. Then came the speech. About how proud she was. About how stressful Melissa's situation had been. How the pressure made everyone act out of character. "But that's no excuse," she said, giving me the soft, pleading look. And for a second, I almost believed her. Almost. Then she said it. "I was thinking, maybe we could have a fresh start. I'd love to come over again sometime. Maybe bring Melissa and the kids? It'd be nice for everyone to see your new place." And there it was. I kept my expression calm. "I don't think that's a good idea right now," I said, slow and measured. "Things are still tense, and I'm not ready for that." She nodded, but her smile went stiff. "Of course. I understand," she said. But her eyes were scanning the room again, like she was taking inventory for Melissa's benefit. After a few minutes of awkward small talk, she stood up. "Well, I should get going," she said. "Thanks for letting me stop by." "I really mean it, Rachel. I just want us to be a family again." I gave her a nod, but nothing more. After she left, I locked the door behind her and just stood there for a while, staring at that pie sitting on my counter. The whole thing felt off. Too convenient. Too polished. I couldn't stop thinking about how she didn't bring up any of the stuff that had happened. Not the texts, not the voicemails, not the Facebook posts, not even the part where I changed my number and blocked her. It was like she'd scrubbed it all from her memory. And the "maybe I'll bring Melissa and the kids" line? That didn't feel like an innocent suggestion. It felt like a test. A way to see how much ground I'd give up. How much of my boundary she could push without making me slam the door again. So no, I haven't reached out since. And she hasn't contacted me again either. But I've got this feeling in my gut that this isn't over. Not by a long shot. Knowing my family, there's always a next move. I just don't know what it is yet. What do y'all think? Was my mom actually trying to make peace, or was that just another tactic to sneak and control through the back door? Part of me wants to hope she meant well. But the bigger part? It's telling me to stay on guard. Update 3. Hey Reddit. Me again. And wow! I wish I could say this was the part where everything settled down. But no. Things went from annoying to full-blown nuts faster than I could blink. So, remember that day my mom showed up with an apology and a pie? Yeah. At the time, I told y'all something felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something about that visit just didn't sit right with me. She seemed a little too curious about my place, asking about the locks, poking around every room, making casual comments about the layout. I brushed it off as her usual nosiness, but now I know better. That wasn't curiosity. That was reconnaissance. A few days went by after that visit. I kept my head down, focused on work. It was a busy week, and honestly, things had been quiet on the family front for once. I started to let myself believe maybe, they'd finally backed off. Then came Saturday. I went out to run some errands, groceries, Target, a stop by the post office. Just normal stuff. Got home around noon, arms full of shopping bags, thinking I'd spend the rest of the day in peace. But as I pulled into my driveway, I froze. Melissa's SUV was parked right in front of my house. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. I walked up, fumbled with my keys, trying to stay calm, but then I heard voices. Inside. For a second, I thought maybe I'd left the TV on or a window open. But the second I stepped into the entryway, it hit me like a freight train. They were in my house. Melissa, Brian, and all 3 kids. And the scene? Absolute chaos. Chloe and Caleb were sprawled across my couch, surrounded by toys, snack wrappers, juice boxes, none of it was theirs. Little Eli was toddling around the living room, chewing on one of my throw pillows like it was a dog toy. Brian was standing in the kitchen like he owned the place, halfway through making himself a sandwich. And Melissa? She was in my sunroom, rearranging my furniture like she was filming for HGTV. I didn't even know what to say. What the hell is going on? I finally managed, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. Melissa looked up, completely unfazed. "Oh hey, Rachel," she said, like this was totally normal. "We figured it'd be easier to just move in while you were out." I blinked. "Move in? Are you serious?" She rolled her eyes, like I was the one being dramatic. "Mom gave us the key. She said it'd be fine." That's when it hit me. The spare key. The one I left on the kitchen counter during Mom's apology visit. "You're kidding me," I said. "Mom gave you the key?" Melissa just shrugged and pointed at the counter. "We really needed the space, and your house is perfect. I mean, yeah, it could have been bigger if you'd listened to us, but it'll do." Brian finally gets an office. I felt myself start to boil. "Get out," I said. "Calm. Cold." Brian chimed in, still chewing. "Come on, Rachel. Don't be like that. You're single. You don't need all this space. This setup makes way more sense for us." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were standing in my house, treating it like just another handout my parents had arranged for Melissa. I repeated myself, louder. "Get out of my house." Melissa scoffed. "We're family, Rachel. Stop being so dramatic. The kids love it here. We've already started settling in. It's not like you were using all this space anyway." I was so angry I couldn't even think straight. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. Melissa's eyes widened. "Seriously? You're calling the cops on your own family?" "Watch me," I said, holding the phone up so she could see. When the dispatcher picked up, I calmly explained the situation. That I'd come home to find my sister and her family had entered my house without permission. That they refused to leave. They kept trying to talk over me, Melissa protesting, Brian whining, but I ignored them. By the time the police arrived, I was shaking from the adrenaline. But I was also done. Done with the guilt. Done with the excuses. The officers were polite but firm. They asked Melissa and Brian to explain themselves, and the story they told was as ridiculous as you'd expect. "We're family," Melissa said, like that was some kind of magic password. Brian went on about how I had plenty of space, and how it just made sense for them to be here. The cops weren't buying any of it. They told them point blank they were trespassing and needed to leave immediately. Melissa burst into tears, saying she didn't realize it was such a big deal. Brian muttered something about how selfish I was. I didn't say a word. I let the officers handle it. And I have to admit, it was kind of satisfying to watch them pack up their stuff, including the pantry snacks they'd helped themselves to, and shuffle out the door like a couple of kids getting caught with their hands in the cookie jar. After they were gone, one of the officers pulled me aside and asked if I wanted to press charges. I thought about it. For a moment, I really did. But at that point, I just wanted them gone. I told him no, as long as they stayed away, I'd let it go. He nodded and said they'd file a report just in case anything else happened. Once they left, I locked the door, then just stood there. Everything felt different. Like my house didn't quite belong to me anymore. It felt violated. Like someone had taken something from me and just assumed it was theirs to keep. The entitlement still makes my skin crawl. That night, I called a locksmith and had every single lock changed. I'm also looking into a security system. Cameras, motion lights, the whole deal. I'm done giving them the benefit of the doubt. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't desperation. This was planned, calculated, deliberate. And the fact that my mom gave them the key? I still don't have words for that. I called my lawyer first thing the next morning. Told her the whole story. Within 13 hours, we had cease and desist letters drafted and delivered to my mom, Melissa, and Brian. The letters spelled everything out, what they did, how it crossed the line, and that if anything like this happened again, I'd take legal action without hesitation. So that's where things stand now. I'm still angry. Honestly, I'm exhausted. There's this strange mix of rage and numbness sitting in my chest that I haven't quite figured out what to do with yet. I keep waiting for another shoe to drop because if there's one thing I know about my family, it's that they never go quietly. But for now, I'm reclaiming my peace one boundary at a time. And to everyone who's followed along on this wild ride, thank you. Your support, advice, and brutal honesty have kept me grounded through all of this. I really can't thank you enough. Take care, Reddit. I think this chapter is finally closed.